This is one way to make a feather in Blender 259 using particle system. We're just starting out with the default scene, and we want to get rid of the cube. We want to center everything, Shift C, and then add a plane. Rotate that plane on the x-axis 90 degrees. You can actually work from any view you want. I like the front view most, so we'll go to the front view and get rid of perspective, and then we will center the view a little bit. This just, I like to keep things I'm working on in the center. Now we want a long thin emitter, so we'll scale along the x-axis, scale along the z-axis. Just keep working with that. Until you get it nice and thin. Then we'll go to the side view so we can see the strands of the feather, and we have a nice emitter now. We'll also go to particle, add system, and use hair. Change the hair length down to be kind of proportional with the length of the feather. Then we want to reduce that down maybe around 700, somewhere in that range, to taste basically. Particle mode and comb, and then you want a nice upward angle. I'd look at a real feather to get it figured out what kind of feather you're trying to make, but I'm just doing a quick out of my head one here, not trying to look like any particular bird, just a feather. Try to get it fairly good. There'll be some irregularities, but I'm not going for perfection in this. Now we will just trim it to be shaped like a feather. Again, if I wanted a realistic feather, I would pull up an image and try to just match the shape of the feather exactly. There's a rough shape of a feather. Okay, so now we have the particle system, and we'll go and add a material to that. We'll call this one just feather. It makes a lot of sense. Turn down the specularity. We don't need a shiny feather. The rest of this will be alright. I'm not too worried about the strand settings. Now we're going to texture the feather. So we'll make a new texture and call this one modeled. Just accepting the default cloud texture, and we want to go into the color ramp. I'm going to add several stops here, and I'm not going to put too many in because I don't want to delay out the length of the tutorial at all. And we'll start with this one. Let's make this one dark. Let's get something into some kind of a color to it instead of just gray. Then we'll make a light one, give it some color. Get that alpha is all the way up on all of these. You can see what's starting to happen here. We'll darken this one down. Just give it some colors, whatever you think is going to work for the bird that you have in your mind. You can try to imitate the natural coloring and patterns of the bird you're working on. You can also load an image map. I just kind of like this idea. It kind of makes an interesting, kind of unique, for want of a better word, feather. So here we go with the light color, and let's render that and see what we have. Okay, there's all the variations. I didn't do a good job of combing, but you can see the variations there. So what we got to do now is make that look more like this does. So we can skip all of these settings here, go to hardness, And for the basis, let's go to Veroni 3. Take a look at that. A little more interesting. We'll leave the size alone for now. Coordinates, we want object. Projection, we'll use cube. Let's see what that did to it. There we go. Now we're getting a little more like I was thinking. Had a kind of a mottled look like you might see on a grouse or something. We can experiment with values, and this is where you decide what it is you're trying to achieve. I like that look. We'll go with that. So play around with the settings. You can also change where the coordinates originate from. Try the various parameters. Now let's try this one, see what happens if I change that one. Gives it a little finer texture. Maybe somewhere in between would be nice. Let's see what large looks like. Yeah, I think I like the smaller better. Down in that 20 range seemed to look pretty nice. Yeah, we'll go with that. Alright, so I want to get into the camera mode and bring this thing out a little bit so I can see the whole feather. Hit G and then the middle mouse button and you can pull it out. Now we want to create the other side of this feather. So we'll select the feather, Shift D to duplicate, hit enter, and then R to rotate around the Z on 180 degrees. And render that out. Lighting is not good here. For some reason got a little bit of an irregularity. You can comb both sides. You're not going to have an absolutely symmetrical feather no matter, if you look at them you'll see they're not symmetrical. Okay, some feathers have a darkness down on the tip end here, so we just want to add some darkness to the bottom of the feather. That's done by choosing the first open slot. This is going to layer these textures. Want a new one and we'll call it dark end. This one needs to be a blend. And we're going to use the color ramp. We need a dark black here. And the alpha should be down a little bit. We don't want to totally lock out the color of the feather at the bottom end. And let's see here, we want to do it vertically, I'm sure. Let's leave the coordinates where they are and see what we got. Looks like it's up at this end of the feather a little bit. I ought to change this and see what we get here. That's not any better. We'll go back. Well, let's try a sphere. See if we can get a good projection there. Let's bring the black out a ways. There it is. It's kind of well blended here, so let's see if we can tighten that line up a little bit. That's getting better. I think the alpha here probably, let's try it all the way up and see what we get. Now we're getting, it's more of a gray look because of the lighting. It's at the wrong end of the feather, so you hit the F and flip it and render that again. And then we'll bring it down more to the bottom of the feather. And you can make that line just as tight as you want by keep putting these two stops closer together. Just kind of whatever you feel is going to work. And that's the basics of getting a feather. Now all you have to do to finish this feather out, you need a shaft. So you'd make a long cylinder, and I would break it up into segments and make it have a slow arc. You could do that with the ladder, so you could just manually give it an arc, match up the planes to the two feather halves, and pull them inside of the tube, the shaft of the feather. Be sure you have a quill hanging out here. And you could put some little soft feathery hairs down here at the bottom to give it more realism. That's just one technique to do a feather. And again, I was not looking for a final finished something to show off project, just something to show how it's actually done. Thank you.